Hello there guys and welcome back to the channel. So one of the upcoming champions is going to be Black Widow Deadly Origins, and her ability description did give us a really good idea of what kind of a champion she's going to be, but still left us with a lot of questions unanswered. Now there is a good thing and there is something bad that came out of it after all, and I do realize that this video is probably going to ruffle some feathers, but either way I figured it is worth making it. So the thing I'm talking about is the deep dive Black Widow that Marvel Concept Champions just posted on their channel, where they basically described her as a champion, what she can do, what she will be able to do, what her strengths are. However, never ever they kind of manage champions' weaknesses to include in these videos, and there will be quite many apparent weaknesses for her in my opinion that I will do my best to shed some light on, and I'm kind of gonna release my prediction where she's gonna land as a character in the more meta game of MCOC. So anyways, let's scroll past. I took a lot of screenshots from that video, from the gameplay examples. First thing that we can mention, first big question that we have was how many baton hits did Black Widow have? Because her baton hits has a chance to inflict shock on opponent, which is going to be a great way to deal extra damage, and also baton hits deal energy damage instead of physical, which is an important attribute to be aware of. And the good news there is that she has all of her basic hits as baton hits. So that means every single hit she does in her basic hit deals energy damage and has a chance to apply shock debuff. So that is definitely something that we were unsure about, and is really good, because every single hit has a chance to apply shock. Thus it by definition increases the amount of shock she can apply in the fight and increase her damage output. So that is very cool to note. In addition, it's worthwhile noting that she, just like Stealth Suit Spider-Man, has double hit mediums both at the start and the finish. So it means effectively she has a 7-hit basic combo, which can be useful. It can be annoying against champions like Thing or Thor Ragnarok, for instance, but she has some kits against Thing that can kind of help her manage the rock stacks quite well as well in her medium kit with ability accuracy reduction. So it's something to keep in mind, but I overall do like that. I think it's kind of cool, and it also makes her animations look absolutely sick, because yeah, she does look really cool when you're playing it, but that obviously by itself doesn't sell the champion to me. So now we can move on. Another mention for her animations, her dashback animation, because it covers quite a lot of distance, so it helps you dash some tricky to avoid special attacks, just like Analysed, for instance. So it's very good to note as well. But here, this screenshot, I just couldn't help but resist to include it here. So we can see that 18k Black Widow is fighting an Elektra, and she's critting for 2k. Now, there's absolutely no doubt about it. It's pathetic amount of damage on her base kits. Now, we have recently seen quite a lot of champions deal absolutely horrible damage outside of their main game plan. Kind of, for instance, Storm Pyramid X hits like absolute wet noodle outside of her special attacks, which are supercharged by prowess. Now, Longshot deals absolutely abysmal damage on his base hits outside of his level 2. So typically they kind of try to recover, I guess, the overall damage output by very explosive special 2s, but yeah, keep in mind, she is not going to be a champion with incredibly amazing damage output. She will definitely not perform as, like, I don't know, Stealth Suit Spider-Man, for instance, or Ghost or Omega or whoever. Her base numbers do seem quite weak. Now, I'm not sure whether this is with full mastery setup or without any masteries at all, but even if there is, for instance, no cruelty mastery applied, it still looks very bad, especially when we're gonna get later on to the video. But I do feel that this is very important to note, because that actually hides how useful champions can be, and recently we have had a lot of champions with subpar, kind of like mediocre damage output. Unfortunately, Black Widow looks like a very fun champion. She will have some very hard hitting level 2s for sure, which we're going to discuss later, and access to some decent shock damage, but her base damage is definitely gonna be extremely underwhelming, and we're gonna make a note of that in a bit. Now, yes, here we can see that 18 KPI, 6-star Black Widow. Shock damage per debuff is about 290, so that's not even the highest. It's not overly great and big shock damage, but it can add up because it's going to be present throughout the fight, basically. Another thing to note is that Widow's Insight, that is that white icon with the Black Widow's kind of like logo on it, which is like a new HUD icon designed for Black Widow. Basically, it activates whenever you punish opponents finishing their combos in your block, or throwing a heavy attack, or you land an intercept, or you punish opponent's special attack, but it does not work with parry method. So if you're somebody who plays conservatively and relies on your parries quite a lot, you will struggle to use Black Widow at her fullest potential, because you want this Widow's Insight to be consistently active. Thus you want to consistently either intercept or block bait or punish special attacks. You do not want to parry like ever, because that will kind of be a missed opportunity to activate this Widow's Insight, which increase your chance to shock opponents, lets your mediums reduce opponents' defensive ability accuracy by 70%, and also lets you gain these precision buffs, finishing combos, so on and so forth. So yes, she will require certain specific finesse to play, and also that does mean that she cannot infinitely stun opponents, for instance, with her heavy attack, because that stun is only applied if you heavy opponent while your Widow's Insight is active. So effectively, if you can punish opponent's special attack with your heavy attack, or if you punish opponent's heavy attack with your own heavy attack, if you parry opponent and drop a heavy attack, that will not stun your opponent. So keep that in mind. Very important note. I know some of people in the comment section were discussing and talking about it. Now, her evade mechanic is quite cool, and that applies that sabotage debuff, but you need to keep in mind that it's gonna force you to make an alternative choice, because outside of matchups where you naturally will miss, effectively you're gonna have to decide whether you're gonna want to have the big damage from your level 2s, or you will want to trigger your sabotage debuffs while you're level 1. So again, you're gonna have very high alternative cost. So if you want to use sabotage as a mechanic in the fight, and you don't have opponent that could make you miss naturally, you're gonna have to make a conscious choice whether to go for damage or whether you want to go for sabotage, further reduction of opponent's ability accuracy and like some bit of extra damage. So I'm personally never very big fan of these ideas where you cannot utilize champion toolkits to their fullest, where you kind of have to pick either or. Level 2 is damage, level 1 is sabotage. Sabotage has some benefits in some situations and gives you that evade counter, but the evade counter cannot be used passively as failsafe either way, because you only have 6 seconds to use it. Now, she does have access to this evade counter with the synergy, but keep that in mind. By herself, without the synergy, you will not have this failsafe active pretty much ever, even though you can activate with level 1, but it's only for 6 seconds, and you want to use it as quickly as you can. Super important to note. And so here we can see that the sabotage gets applied, and that's all wonderful. And here we have 21 KPI, so that would be probably the same 18 KPI Black Widow with class advantage in a fight against the Realm of Legends Hulk, I take it, in this point. And we can see that she's still hitting with her special 2, critting for 3k with 2k. Now, there is additional burst of damage, and that is like a very large amount of shock damage that she can deliver extra, that I'm trying to showcase here as well. And it kind of triggers on every hit, or every of her baton hits on her level 2, so she triggers like 4 or 5 times. So level 2 adds up for quite a lot of damage, kind of like guaranteed if our opponent is under a shock debuff. So it probably hits for like 80 to 100k quite easily and comfortably. But at the same time, your base damage is quite bad. And again, keep in mind that this will be kind of like your alternative choice to make in this fight. Also, as an indicator that Hulk, for instance, has made it to a 90 hit combo, it's probably mean that she launched minimum of 2 of those level 2s. So she will have somewhat decent damage output, obviously, in the fights where you can shock the opponent. But again, keep in mind that that is all things combined considered, including the shock damage and kind of like perfect matchups where you do not need to rely on her utility, for instance, where you do not need to largely spam medium hits to try and bypass opponent's defensive ability accuracy, so on and so forth. So level 2 is kind of her only big and good redeeming quality, because that will do quite a lot of damage. And she has a way how to gain extra power via another synergy with Taskmaster. But if you're going to need to access her utilities, the damage output is going to go down drastically, and her base damage is going to be relatively underwhelming. Now, perhaps I am just misconstruing things here from these clips in the video. Maybe if you fully synergize, I don't know, get all the masteries, because I'm not sure what mastery setups are being used here. But once again, I still have extremely worried mind about Black Widow, considering that her damage is, yeah, it's like, look at those base hits. Those base hits are Groot level hits. Kind of. And another thing that was quite important that I wanted to note here, we can again see that it's 13k shock damage, and that activates for every hit, so that is definitely important. But yeah, her hits even with cruelty. So here you can see that 10 cruelty passives, which was supposed to be another very big thing for Black Widow, way for her to increase the damage. Basically, you can acquire up to 10 cruelty passives based on how many of those Widow insights you have acquired by the time you activate level 3. And here you can see that even that crits for like 3k. And I definitely found this worth mentioning, because the hosts of the video emphasized the words big yellow numbers. I didn't see any big yellow number. I don't know about anybody else. I do not consider a 3,335 crit from a 17k champion a big yellow number. So there are no big yellow numbers to be found. There are some good shock damage numbers, let's keep that in mind, and overall I think she's gonna somewhere land in the middle of the damage kind of like pool. She's not gonna be the hardest hitting champion, but her level 2s will make up for a lot of it. But that'll mean you cannot gain access to the benefits of level 3 and the long sabotage debuff via that, and you cannot gain access to that evade safety net as well. So it means she's going to be effectively just like a high damage, well, relatively high damage output champion with very little utility, where you can sacrifice that damage output for some increased amount of utility. And that is quite unfortunate. That is something I definitely expected more. I did not expect to see 10 cruelty passives and clearly at least a rank 2 or 3 Black Widow critting for 3k. And yes, that is kind of like the idea behind the champion, that as far as I have gathered. And for me, in my head, she's going to be relatively similar to Squirrel Girl. Now, Squirrel Girl has some bits of utility that aren't overly potent and overly effective. One thing that we do know Squirrel Girl for is her big bleed damage on her level 2 that kind of instantly explodes on the opponent, and she's really fun to play. So I also expect Black Widow to be relatively squishy, just like Squirrel Girl is, thus making it by default much harder to use in endgame content, because Widow's insight requires you to either consistently intercept and punish special attacks, or have opponents throw heavy attacks or finish their combos in a block. Latter two will often result in a lot of block damage. So I'm not too confident on how viable she's going to be in endgame scenarios. Additionally, her ability accuracy reduction can be extremely useful, obviously 70 to 90%. But again, it's not a guarantee, and you often cannot take that risk in these important fights. For instance, Alliance War, I would never trust 90% RNG chance to kind of like carry me through an Alliance War fight, because if that ability, defensive ability accuracy reduction, for instance, fails on Iron Man Infinity War, I get parried and I get comboed in the face. If that 70% ability accuracy fails against the Thing, and he gains rock stacks, and he's gonna gain a lot of them quickly because you do 7-hit combos, he's gonna go unstoppable and hit you in the face. If this ability accuracy reduction fails against Black Widow, you're gonna get smacked. If it fails against Darkhawk, you're gonna get smacked once more. If it fails, so you get the point. You cannot trust 90%. You need to make a considered decision whether you have 100% chance to bypass these abilities, or you have to play around triggering these abilities. Unfortunately, I feel that Black Widow might give people kind of false sense of security. So all in all, I expect her to be quite fun champion with some bursty level 2s. Overall, made the core damage output though, maybe somewhere on medium high side, maybe. In perfect conditions, but keep in mind that's energy damage. It's reliant on shock and opponents not being shock immune, opponents not shrugging off these shock debuffs, opponents not having nodes such as tenacity or rapid metabolism. She definitely will obviously not work too well in cornered, so on and so forth. So there are a lot of matchups where she will not be able to access her full damage output. And as soon as you take away that shock damage, then her actual damage is quite pathetic. Those precisions will be somewhat useful, but I don't think they'll provide that big of a noticeable damage increase. And those cruelties seem to be, I don't know, broken. But yeah, so unfortunately, that is kind of my review for Black Widow. I, for now, look at her as relatively same level champion as Squirrel Girl is, which I consistently say is really fun champion, but definitely not a flagship of your account that will carry you through Alliance War, Alliance Quest, or Act 6, so on and so forth. So yeah, that is my review. Let me know what you guys think, how she will look like when she comes to the contest, and if you have made it thus far in the video, then I definitely have to reward you with a picture. No, that's actually a GIF of Baby Yoda having a drink from his little adorable cup. However, if you did not like today's video or you do not like Baby Yoda, well, then you can show yourself out without any hesitation. Shouldn't be too hard considering you're probably at your own home on a lockdown right now. Either way, that's me done for now. See you guys.